Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Today is October 14th, 2022. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Research Live. My name is Mike Terrazas, and I'm the Director of Research Communications here at UGA. I do apologize that my voice is a little froggy today, but thankfully you won't have to hear from me very much. Today, we're going to talk about improving community engagement and other goals of UGA's Human Research Program. So the point of Research Live is to provide UGA investigators with timely, practical information to support your work, and we'll do our best to meet that goal today. Before we get started, I just have a couple of housekeeping points to mention. When we take questions following the presentation, you can ask your question through the Q&A or through the raise hand function. You should see all those options along the bottom of your Zoom window. If you raise your hand, I'll assume you want to ask your question by voice. So I'll call on you by name and enable your microphone while you ask your question. We'd love to hear any feedback you have about today's session, including suggestions for future topics. The Research Live page on the Office of Research website has a suggestion form that you can access through a red button at the top of the page, and we encourage you to make use of it. I'll drop the URL for that page into the chat window here in just a minute. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So let me introduce our speakers today. We have got Kim Fowler, Director of the Human Subjects Office in the Office of Research, Jessica Leshebekin, HSO's Assistant Director, and Kim Fernandez, Compliance Professional within HSO. So Kim Fowler, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mike. We're happy to have everyone here with us today and hope that some of the information we're about to provide proves to be helpful in some way. We are hoping also that this is the first of many more to come. We would like to make this a more regular happening where we're sharing information about what's going on in the Human Research Protection Program. We could talk about portal changes that might be upcoming or have recently been made, anything that's going on with regulations and policy, new services that we might be providing and guidance that we have. Not going to be the only method we have to communicate with you. We still have, of course, our website where we put everything out. The first time we decide what's going to happen, we're going to announce it there. And then we have the insights announcements that go out. We can use listservs. We can use direct emails. Sometimes when there's something that affects only a certain kind of research that's going on or a certain set of investigators in a department, we're happy to send out direct emails about that too. So keep your eye on most of these outlets, and we will be using these venues to give you information more often from now on. Our agenda for today is to talk about some of the enhancements we're making to the program, some goals we have, strategies for reaching those goals. Some of these things are already going on and have been going on as part of our continuous quality improvement, and some of them are new. So we want to just get the word out there about what's happening. We're going to talk about what initiatives we have to try to improve our compliance overall, and what kind of initiatives we're doing to improve quality and efficiency and effectiveness of the Human Research Protection Program. And finally, we're going to give you a little bit of information about something we started last year when we did some webinars about community engaged research, but we're trying to take that to the next level and figure out how to help UGA overall improve its outreach efforts about research so that we can improve the community members' understanding of what human research is, what UGA is doing, and help prospective participants have a way to communicate with us about research that's going to go on in their community. So why do we have these goals? I think that's an important thing to think about. We have an accreditation from AHRP. We'll just use that acronym because the name is really long, but this accrediting body is a nonprofit that comes in and looks at all of our materials, our processes, gives us feedback on best practices, how well we're doing, and shows us some areas where we could make some improvements. So those things that I mentioned on the previous slide are areas that AHRP said, you guys should probably come up with some strategies to improve these, some plans, some measurable goals, and give us a status report on that in November and another one in April. So we've been working on things behind the scenes, and now we're ready to communicate this more broadly because we're going to need everybody to help us meet some of these goals. Another reason is that it matches our mission. We're here to make sure that everybody has the tools they need to do human research that is ethical and that protects people. And we want to make sure that we keep thinking of the HRPP not as an office, but this is a collective effort, right? So we're all working on this in different ways, and we want to work with our researchers and the research community, and the community outside of UGA, to be able to meet these goals. And finally, we're doing this because, well, it's the right thing to do. These are the things that a human research protection program should be working on. So the starting point here is improving the quality of compliance. And when you think about compliance, you're thinking about the regulations, the policies, and thinking about that in context of what is a human research protection program, not that office, but a group of offices and individuals working together. We have to monitor and measure how everyone's doing, because everyone is responsible for compliance and ethical conduct of human research. So we have initiated some programs, some processes to measure what goes on here. When we get a submission, how do we review it? Are we filling out all the right documentation? Are we making sure the records are complete? How long does it take us to do that? What kind of back and forth count do we have per project? What are the things that slow us down? When we interact with other units, how does that enhance the process, or maybe how does it hinder the process, and how can we make that more efficient? We also think about the IRB when they're doing reviews, so things that are done in a meeting, or when one of our IRB members helps us with an expedited review. And we want to make sure that the documentation of those reviews is complete and it meets policy and regulatory requirements. So we're going to start looking at the minutes, and do they have a full rendering of what happens, and checklists that are used. Do we actually talk about all of the important things you're supposed to talk about during these meetings? And finally, we're going to look at other people in the HRPP stakeholder group, researchers. How are you guys doing out there? Once you have that approval, do you know what records you're supposed to keep and where you're supposed to keep them? Do you know how to check in and make sure that the materials you're providing to participants are the ones that were approved? So we're going to look at these things post-approval through some monitoring processes that I'll talk about in more detail shortly. We are going to do some surveys. We're going to do some site visits. And finally, we're going to be communicating more about some really important things, because we've done some monitoring and found that these are areas where maybe our communication hasn't been so robust. Things like tracking expiration dates and progress report dates, and making sure that whatever's happening in the field doesn't stray into the area of non-compliance. So in doing the audits, we started looking at ourselves first, because that's what you should do. So we looked at our own review records and started counting up things that we found and identifying errors or identifying problems or just flat out areas of improvement. And we have started working on making those improvements. Some of the more common things we found during these audits were that some checklists were missing from records. We found that when we were processing closures, sometimes we picked the wrong determination, and so the portal record didn't update accordingly. We found that every once in a while we get our dates mixed up. I know that when we set dates for exempt research and we give them a 5-year period to do their work in, myself, I sometimes can't add 5. So instead of 2027, I might have picked 2023 or some random thing. So in any case, we find our own errors, we're correcting them behind the scenes. And sometimes that prompts a notification to the research community when we do it. And sometimes it's something that you probably won't notice. So we're just correcting it in our own records and doing training internally to make sure that we're all doing this a little bit more carefully. We had found one instance where that regulatory change in 2018, which was a big deal, and didn't apply to all funded projects, somehow got applied incorrectly. And that was a really important one for us to find, not just because that was a pretty big mistake, but we found it in time to clear it, to fix it before it caused a problem with the sponsoring agency. So we were very happy that that monitoring is going on and that we're able to find these things and fix them. We also have a responsibility to keep track of who our IRB members are. And do we have all of the current information related to them? We found that we didn't. So we've been reaching out to our IRB members and asking them to help us update those records. On a high note, we have found that we are really good at writing minutes. They're fantastic. They meet all of the requirements. And we're very happy that our new committee administrator, Marie Dillon, is out there doing the good work that she's doing. So there's always something good to find, some few bad things to find, but audits are not always bad. They help us find things before they get bad. Another thing we're measuring here internally is our own performance in terms of efficiency. And here where we're talking about efficiency in review times. We all know that reviews are an iterative thing. We go back and forth a few times, asking questions, gathering information, and that all leads to how long it takes between submission to approval. So we're measuring that. And as we implement training here, processes to improve our efficiency, we're hoping to see these numbers change. As you all may be aware, maybe you're not, last year we experienced a lot of staffing changes, and that slowed things down considerably. And also the year 2021 was just a crazy year in all ways, right? So 2020 threw everybody kind of a curveball. And in 2021, that ball was still curving. And we ended up having a lot of new submissions. So we had this complexity of doing human research during a global pandemic, and we had a lot of submissions coming in, and we lost some staff, and those review times were getting a little bit out of control. We know that, and we implemented a lot of changes and tried to bring in some other external IRBs to take some of the workload for us until we could hire new staff. As Chris King and I mentioned in a webinar in March, we are now fully staffed. We have everybody on board, they're still training. So we're seeing that overall review time go down, just like it should. It is hard to see how much it's actually gone down because we also have fewer submissions this year. And that's just a normal thing. These things kind of ebb and flow. One important thing I want to highlight, though, is the gray bar here. And it's the days from when a submission is determined to be complete till it gets approved. So it's not the total review time, it's a portion of the review time, what you would audit, I guess, sort of think of the IRB review time for these projects. It's gone from a median of 7 days to 6 days. And although that's only 1 day, that's a big improvement. And that means that even with all the new staff and all the training and all the changes that have gone on, we're able to work hard at trying to bring that date down or that time period down. I will talk a little bit about that concept of complete because it's hard to see from your side of things as a researcher when you submit things to us. It's overall time, right? So you're thinking, I submitted it, when do I have the approval letter in my hand? But there's this preliminary period that we call the pre-review, where we're working hard to make sure that all the materials that are supposed to be there are there in the record. We're trying to make sure that, if there's attachments missing or the wrong attachment somewhere, that we're telling people that right away. And sometimes we're just trying to clear up what's happening. Do we understand the project well enough to be able to figure out what kind of review to give it, and that we can actually meet the criteria to approve something? So there is a lot of process that goes on before the actual IRB work gets done, and that is represented in this. We're hoping in the future to get some better data out of our portal that we can work with and give you some more information about, like, how many days do we work on it? How many days are we waiting for a response from the study team? But for now, we're dealing with the submit to approval because that's really the important times. And then I want to talk a little bit about the monitoring we're doing once things have been approved. And there's a concept, a type of process that you guys might be familiar with called an RNI. This is a report of new information. And that's a broad category because RNIs can be anything, adverse events. So when someone gets sick or injured as a result of their participation, maybe just something you didn't foresee when you were setting up your project and something went wrong. It just went horribly wrong and you need to tell somebody about that. So you report it to the IRB. Sometimes it's a complaint by a participant that just can't get resolved. And that could be anything. And that comes our way. And so we want to document that we got this information. And so I put some basic metrics here, as in how many RNIs do we have? Last year we had 43. This year we already have 55. But don't think of that as a bad thing. That is a representation of us monitoring more carefully and trying to find the little things and fix them before they become big things. So this is good overall, because big non-compliance that we consider serious or continuing does have to get reported to funding agencies and to the Office of Human Research Protections that oversees IRBs and institutions. We don't want to get there. We want to find these things before they get too bad. Other simple metrics related to reports of new information are: what kind of new information do we see the most often? Lapses in approval, where you are supposed to submit and get a continuing review, or what people call renewals, and fail to do that in a timely manner, or fail to do it at all, or fail to close a study when it's over. So it either lapses or we think it's still ongoing and it's not. Sometimes you are asked to provide a progress report. Instead of a request for renewal, we're just asking for a status update. If those things are ignored, that's actually non-compliance. So we have to document it, report it, and then we have to find some way to get that report in. Overall, we are trying to come up with a strategy to report, to communicate more often outside of the regular portal notifications when something's going to expire, or it has expired, or your progress report is overdue. And we're trying to make connections one-on-one with people to help raise awareness that these are important things to pay attention to, and that we need your help in tracking these so that we have fewer instances of these information getting to us after the fact. Other common things are recruitment materials that we see all the time through listservs. They go through the Office of Registrar sometime, they come up on the graduate student listserv, and those recruitment materials sometimes are different than what the IRB approved. And while these are not big problems, they can be problems if they change, represent something that is against a policy requirement or is not consistent with a policy requirement. So we want to catch those when we see them and help the investigator update the record with maybe changes they want to make, but that are now consistent with policy requirements. And finally, what we're seeing a lot of right now is external IRBs. That means someone who got reviewed by a different IRB, maybe last year when we were short-staffed, have to update the record with us every time the other IRB does something. And when that doesn't happen, it's considered non-compliance. So we're trying to get the word out to people who have been reviewed by other IRBs that they still have to keep our records up to date so that we can do whatever monitoring is required by that other IRB for the project, including doing an audit if that other IRB asks us to do so. So that's kind of the last information I have on what we're doing to try and improve compliance. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Kim Fernandez to talk to you about quality, efficiency, and effectiveness. Go ahead, Kim.
Thank you. So in our efforts to improve quality, increase efficiency and effectiveness of our HRPP, we are focusing on our core services. We are working on cross-training our staff, creating teams, and gathering data from you. Next slide, please. So some of the goals that we're trying to achieve here is to identify some challenges that are faced by investigators during the IRB application development, submission, and review stages. We also want to utilize different methods on educating investigators where we can meet them where their knowledge and experience is at. We want to help build their understanding on the regulatory requirements and the ethical standards. And we want to collaborate with you to problem solve when regulatory issues arise with your applications. Next slide, please. So to achieve these goals, we've created a team called the Protocol Assistance and Compliance Team, also known as PACT. What we're doing is aiming to provide resources and tools to help you reach the highest ethical standards when you're conducting your research with humans. So we're working collaboratively with you. Next slide, please. Some of the core services that we're providing is outreach and training, which we provide to classes, events, and organizations. I want to customize our presentations to meet your needs. So in the request, which you'll send to us via email, and that's to irb@uga.edu with the subject line Attention PACT, we would like to know more details about the type of presentation you need, the topics of interest, who it's for, and your preferred dates and times. We'll work on scheduling that presentation with your group. We're also working heavily on creating an education program. This education program will involve the creation of videos on special topics that you've chosen. And we want to, I'll expand a bit about that later in a later slide. But we're looking on housing those educational videos, hopefully on PEP and on our website, so that they can be easily accessible to you at any time. And we also do offer support appointments, which can be used for many different things. For IRB related questions along the way in the review process. This can be done during application development or when your project is under review. This can include clarification on an application that you're drafting. Maybe you want to understand a little bit more about what the questions are asking and how best to answer those questions. It could also apply when you have received feedback from a reviewer and you want clarification on what exactly they are asking. And that way you can get your resubmission in and get it through the review process more smoothly. We've also started implementing these support appointments for something we're calling not ready for review. What happens is sometimes we receive applications that get reviewed up to a certain point, but then we cannot get further in that review. And most of the times these applications do not have enough information for us to further review it. There may be too many inconsistencies for us to provide helpful feedback to you. Or it could also be that maybe clarifications are needed in order for us to make the determinations that we need to make on our end. Slide, please. So in line with our efforts to improve quality, efficiency, and effectiveness, we are also doing ongoing training with HSO staff. And this training can include general topics, trending issues that we find in review, or even special topics that are selected for new knowledge of our staff. As well, HSO staff are also participating in the conduct of reviews, all of our staff, to keep current with processes and current requirements. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, we are working on developing an education program, which will include the educational videos. We have sent out a survey through listserv requesting feedback from you about human subjects topics that you'd like to hear about. And so that is going to be disseminated to a wider audience soon, but currently there is a link on our website on the overview tab where you can access it if you'd like to complete that survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. So we're going to turn it over now to Jessica, who's going to talk to us a little bit about community outreach efforts. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thanks, Kim. Hello, everyone. So as Mike mentioned, my name is Jessica Lashibakan. I'm the Assistant Director in the Human Subjects Office. I joined the team not too long ago, back in mid-March, I should say, of this year, after several years working in research compliance at Stony Brook University on Long Island, New York. And as far as what I do in the office, I work closely with Kim to provide leadership for HRPP operations. So to get into, these are just our last few slides for today. So our final topic, what are we in the HRPP doing and hoping to do in the future to improve community outreach efforts? So our current role has been guiding researchers as well as research participants toward useful resources on UGA websites and otherwise. And we have a few primary examples here on this slide. Firstly, we have a research participants page on the HRPP website with a statement about what the HRPP actually does and several helpful links to information that will assist them in making the decision to participate in a research study. We even have a comic book that can be used to introduce the idea of clinical research to children, as well as recommended questions to ask when considering participation. We also guide researchers to the Georgia Clinical and Translational Science Alliance, or CTSA, webpage. So for those that are not familiar with GA CTSA, this is a partnership designed to foster collaboration in clinical and translational research. So converting basic research results into practice and speeding up that process to get it into practice sooner. Currently, the GA CTSA consists of UGA, Emory University, Morehouse School of Medicine, and Georgia Tech. So it's designed to help our institutions work together with consideration of our unique locations and really boost contributions to that generalizable knowledge that will benefit people in Georgia and beyond. And this last point that we have here, we offer webinar recordings as well as guidance on community engaged research. So that is CENR, and community-based participatory research, CBPR. So you've likely seen one or both of these terms before. CBPR is a form of community engaged research that usually starts with engaging the community and identifying a topic of importance, and then conducting research combined with action to implement changes that improve the well-being of those in that community. There are a number of considerations to keep in mind when developing a project using CBPR methods, which we offer in our guidance on the HRPP website. Next slide. So now looking ahead, what are we thinking about doing to continue improving community outreach efforts? We'd like to assist in the development of a website where research results can be shared with the local communities who participated and contributed to these studies. Also creating resources related to community projects that will allow for not just sharing the results, but also having an exchange of ideas between the community and researchers. And to do so, it will take engaging with people within the community who can inform us of the best methods to use. So is it a website? Is it incorporating social media? Is it attending certain local events? And so say if it is a website, what sort of content, what sort of format do we use to really engage the community? And to make these decisions, we have to really be informed. Next slide. So this is our last slide before we wrap up. So continuing this idea of engaging the community, the first steps would involve creating a task force that can guide us in future changes that would be beneficial to this institutional goal of improving community outreach efforts. We have these goals of revising the IRB portal application to prompt researchers to consider community engagement and outreach in their efforts, revised or improved website resources, and even contributing to the creation of an institutional commitment statement that represents how UGA views the importance of community engagement in research. Next slide. So this concludes our prepped information for you. We thank you all for attending this session today. We hope it was very informative to you. And of course, you can always reach out to us. So the fastest method for communication is going to be our email at our main email is the irb@uga.edu account. And so we also welcome any questions.
Thank you, Jessica and Kim. And Kim, we have any questions from our audience today? Oh, I see one has just come in. Thinking about that slide with the performance metrics, why does it take so long to determine if a submission is complete?
That's a tough one. really the process of pre-review. So something comes into us in the portal and we pick it up. And so what do? Well, we read it, right? We read the entire submission, we read all of the attachments, and we try to form an idea of what this research is really about. Because number one, we have to figure out what the policy environment is that this project is going to be working in. That means what regulations apply to the activities, to the population, what policies could apply that are from the institutional level, or maybe an organization that we're working with to gain access to some subjects or participants. There is also local laws that have to be figured in, or other federal laws like FERPA or HIPAA, depending on what the activities are of that research. So we have to first identify what laws apply. And that sometimes takes a little while to make sure that we understand all of the activities that are being proposed. Then we have to figure out what kind of review this needs to have. There are 3 in the regulations. There's exempt, there's expedited, and there's a full board, so at a meeting review. So we have to figure that out. Most of the time, there are a number of passes back and forth while we're doing this, where we're not just trying to meet what you might think of as bookkeeping rules, like who can be a principal investigator? Does everyone have the appropriate training? Are the attachments actually there and can you open them? But what kind of laws do we have to consider when we're doing this? So we might do a couple different passes back and forth to get information, and then maybe to help us understand information so that we know where to go with it from there. That can take a while, particularly because sometimes the question we ask is not something the study team's ready to answer. They didn't anticipate the question. So now they have to think about it from their end and maybe do a little redesign when it comes back to us. So that process it's not fast, but we are trying to identify what the common areas are and try to put out some guidance on that, like Kim said. So that's my first thought. Jessica or Kim, do you have anything to add to that?
I did want to add that when we start to review a project, we do spend time to try to understand what you're proposing to do. And so that can take some time if there are some inconsistencies or clarifications that we may need to even be able to make a determination on how to handle that project. So in our way, we try to do what we can before we send it back to you. And when we send it back to you, it's our hope that we're able to get information we need to move it forward. But sometimes applications do have to go back even after that. But it is a collaborative effort. We are working for you. And as Kim said, we are working with our program, we are working on providing that guidance to y'all, including only educational videos and information on our website, but these support appointments are really going to help researchers. So if you find you're in a situation where the application has gone back and forth, you're not sure what we're requiring, or even if you just want to contact us from the get-go, use the support appointment function and we can help you through it.
Great. Thank you, Kim. And Kim, I've got a few more questions coming in. More on the metrics. Does the data you showed represent calendar year? If so, then the 2022 metrics are year to date, correct?
Yes, and yes, it is calendar year. And so, yes, that would have been data available to me when I sat down and tried to use Excel, which is probably last week. So it really included up to the beginning of October. Jessica, you unmuted there at the very end, and I just wonder if you had something to add to that last question.
Not really. I just kind of wanted to emphasize what you both had been saying about this idea of the back and forth. And so just keeping in mind that you can see that status in the portal as far as where are we in this process. And so pre-review is really going to be focused on, we're trying to piece together what exactly are you doing and make sure that everything is there in order for us to actually move forward with that review. So there will be some situations where you're seeing it stays in pre-review. So even though we've had that back and forth, we're doing yet another because more information can come in that pre-review process from what we knew before. And so we may need to continue to have that back and forth, but it's still moving through the process, even though it may seem like we're not going anywhere on that status, but we are getting closer to that approval. So that's the only thing that I wanted to add, just to not be discouraged by all the back and forth. We're still trying to work with you and get to that point of approval as quickly as possible.
Great. Thanks, Jessica. I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
Okay, so a few more questions. I'm gonna break a couple of these questions up to group them together by topic. First, where can we find that PEP survey again?
PEP survey is on our website on the overview tab. So on the top the top left corner, there's an overview tab. If you click there, it's going to be on the left panel.
Great. Okay, we've got a couple questions about training. You talked about new training videos being planned. What training is available now other than city? And then also, is there a way for the educational videos to count for continuing education credits?
That's a good question. So right now, we do not have any educational videos available. There are some in the works, though. We should be posting some soon. I believe there will be 4 videos that we have already created on city training, how to find them and take them. Those are going to be located on PEP and our website within the next month. And then we are also working on a training for exempt research. That one will be posted once it's finalized. It's not finished yet. And I believe we are also piloting a training for research coordinators. And that one, there's still some editing and feedback that we need to get through before we can finalize that video and post it. So we're aiming on posting that early next year. But for now, our website does provide a lot of information. We have information on our requirements, on the submission process, and we are also here to help as well. And I'll leave it to you, Kim, on the continuing education.
Yeah, so I don't think so, because most of the organizations that would require CEs to either maintain some sort of certification are going to have requirements that we're not meeting with these very short topic specific and sometimes UGA specific videos that we're going to try to put out there. I think, though, that those who need CMEs, so that city might or might not have that, and that there are some professional organizations like AHARP, the accrediting body, and Primer that offer some webinars and courses that could contribute towards CEs. We have in the past offered access to city, AHARP, and Primer webinars when we've had the budget to do so. We will hopefully be able to do that again in the future, because I think that does help people out when we can get access to a broad training that is widely acceptable as continuing ed credits and make that available to the research community. It's a good question.
Great, thanks, Kim. We've got one more question right now. The Community Research Task Force you mentioned earlier, who can be on that? Who could participate in that?
I think that's really just going to be people who are interested in contributing their knowledge and expertise to that effort and devoting their time. So those that have been active in the community and can really speak on what are the community interests. I think it will be great to have people like that, researchers that have been engaged in the community. So I wouldn't say that it has to be very specific, and it can be a broad range of people. You really want to get as many voices and opinions as you can in that sort of setting. So for those who are interested, if they heard about that and they are interested in finding out more or even being a part of that, definitely send us an email at that same main email account, irb@uga.edu. We would love to hear from you.
Great, thanks, Jessica. we have any last questions before we let our panelists go? Going once? Going twice? Okay, well, I want to thank our presenters, Kim and Jessica and Kim, as well as all our attendees for being with us today. If you need to refer back to this video, the video recording will be posted soon, hopefully next week, to the Research Live website. And I put that URL in the chat earlier in the event. So we now have a monthly schedule of Research Live events for this fall, every second Friday at 11 a.m. Our next event will be Friday, November 11th, and the topic will be Research Security, What It Means for the UGA Community. That will be presented by Dan Runge, who's Director of our Research Security and Export Control Office, and Marty Bink, Director of Defense and Security Collaborations for UGA, both of them in the Office of Research. So thank you for being with us today. On behalf of all of us, we hope you have a great weekend, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.